One day in heaven, God noticed two of his servants sitting idly and looking unhappy. Surprised by their expressions, he asked, "Hey, this is heaven. You can't be unhappy here. What's the reason for your unhappiness?" The servants replied, "We have nothing to do, and our idleness is making us unhappy." Understanding their plight, God gave them a mission: go fly down to earth, find the two best things in a city, and bring them back to me. The servants immediately flew down to earth, searching for the best the city had to offer. In the heart of the city stood a magnificent statue known as the Happy Prince. The statue was covered in gold, its eyes were made of gleaming blue sapphires, and a precious ruby adorned his waist belt. The Happy Prince had been a symbol of joy and inspiration for all the people in the city, showing them what it meant to be truly happy. Winter was approaching, and one evening, as the sun began to set, a little swallow was looking for a place to rest for the night. He spotted the statue of the Happy Prince and thought, "I can stay at the feet of this statue for the night. It looks like a good place to rest." The swallow nestled himself between the statue's two legs, hoping to stay warm, but soon after, a drop of water fell on the swallow. He looked up at the sky, confused, as the sky was clear and there was no rain. Moments later, a second drop fell on him. Perplexed, the bird looked around, and to his surprise, he saw that the Happy Prince was crying. "Why are you crying?" the swallow asked. "You are the Happy Prince. You should be happy." The statue responded, "I am no longer happy. When I was alive, I was happy. I lived in a grand palace, never leaving its walls. I played in my garden during the day and danced in the evenings. I knew nothing of the world outside my palace and was content with my small, carefree life. That's why they called me the Happy Prince. But now, after my death, they placed me here, and from this vantage point, I can see the entire city. I see the suffering and misery of the people, and though my heart is made of metal, I can still feel their sorrow." "Why are you crying right now?" asked the swallow. The prince explained, "Far away, in a small house at the edge of the city, I see a poor woman. She is sewing a dress for one of the queen's ladies who will attend a grand ball, but her child is sick and crying from hunger. The woman has no money to buy food, and all she can offer her baby is water from the river. I want to help her, but I am only a statue. Will you help me, little swallow? Please, take the ruby from my waist belt to her. She needs it more than I do." The swallow hesitated. "But I must fly to Egypt. All my friends have already gone there for the winter, and it's getting colder here. I must leave soon. Please," the Happy Prince begged. "Stay with me for just one night, and help this woman." Reluctantly, the swallow agreed, promising to leave for Egypt the next morning. He carefully plucked the ruby from the Happy Prince's belt and flew to the woman's house. He slipped the ruby onto her table, and as he flew around the room, the breeze from his wings lulled the sick child to sleep. Content with his good deed, the swallow returned to the Happy Prince. The next day, as the swallow prepared to leave for Egypt, the Happy Prince called out again. "Swallow, dear friend, can you stay one more night? I see a man in a small room at the top of a tall building. He is a writer, struggling to finish his story because he is hungry and cold. He has no money for food or firewood. Can you take one of my sapphire eyes to him? It will buy him what he needs." The swallow protested, "But I can't take your eye. You'll be blind." "Please, I beg you," the Happy Prince implored. "The sapphire will help him live a better life." Moved by the prince's kindness, the swallow agreed. He flew to the writer's home and placed the sapphire on his desk. When the writer saw the beautiful stone, he exclaimed with joy, believing it to be a gift from a generous admirer. With the money he received from selling the sapphire, he bought food and firewood, and his spirits were lifted. That night, the swallow returned to the happy prince, once again preparing to leave for Egypt. But the prince had one final request. "Swallow, one last favor. In the square below, I see a little girl selling matches. She dropped her matches, and now they are ruined. Her father will beat her if she returns home without any money. Please, take my other eye and give it to her so she can sell it and avoid punishment." The swallow was deeply saddened by the request. "If I take your other eye, you'll be completely blind. Please," the happy prince urged, "do this one last act of kindness." The swallow agreed, though it pained him. He took the prince's second sapphire and dropped it into the little girl's hands. She marveled at the jewel, thinking it was just a beautiful piece of glass. Overjoyed, she ran home, hoping to avoid her father's anger. When the swallow returned to the prince, he felt heartbroken for the now blind statue. "You are so kind, dear prince. I can't leave you now. I will stay with you forever." "No, you must go to Egypt," the happy prince insisted. "It's too cold here, and you won't survive the winter." But the swallow refused to leave. He stayed with the prince, telling him stories of the world he had seen during his travels. The happy prince found comfort in the swallow's tales, though he longed to see the city again. "Fly over the city for me, and tell me what you see," the happy prince requested. The swallow flew across the city and saw the contrast between the rich and the poor. He returned to the prince and described how the wealthy dined in their warm homes while the poor shivered in the streets. The happy prince's heart ached for the suffering people, and he said, "I am covered in fine gold. Take it and distribute it among the poor. They need it more than I do." One by one, the swallow plucked off the thin leaves of gold that adorned the happy prince and gave them to the poor. As they received the gold, their faces lit up with hope, and they were able to buy food and warm clothing. As winter deepened, the city was blanketed in snow, and the little swallow grew weaker each day. One cold night, the swallow died at the feet of the happy prince. When the prince realized his friend had passed, his heart, made of metal, cracked in sorrow. The next morning, the townspeople noticed the dead swallow and the now dull statue of the happy prince, stripped of its gold and jewels. "The statue looks terrible," they said. "It's no longer fit for our city." The city council ordered the statue to be taken down and melted. But the heart of the happy prince, which had cracked, refused to melt. The workers discarded it alongside the dead swallow. In heaven, God asked his servants, "What did you bring me from the city?" They replied, "We found two things that were truly the best, the broken heart of the happy prince and the dead swallow." God smiled. "You have chosen well. These are the best things in the city. I will keep them in my paradise forever. The swallow will sing beautiful songs, and the happy prince will live in my city of gold." Do you still like today's story? If you like, please remember to subscribe to this channel and click the like icon. You can receive notifications and hear the latest stories as soon as possible. Good night, my baby.